Based off the P.L. Travers book of the same name, Mary Poppins, set in 1910, follows the life of George Banks, played by David Tomlinson, who literally works in a bank. Mr. Banks works in a bank. Quite a stretch there, guys.
What an impertinent thing to say.
He has two kids, Jane and Michael, played by Karen Dotrice and Matthew Garber respectively, who are two little terrors, always scaring their nannies away. Feeling bad, they write out a requirement for the new one, which George tears up in front of them in disgust. Great father.
Dreadful.
But after some magic or something, a mysterious goddess or something called Mary Poppins, played by Julie Andrews, shows up, cheats her way to the job, manipulates the kids with supernatural powers, ultimately helping the family join together once again before leaving them flying away into the sky. This is a weird film.
That is entirely beside the point.
The movie's production was mainly based on the first ever novel, and allegedly was only made because Walt Disney's daughters loved the story so much, they made their father promise to adapt them into a film. It was even considered as early as 1938, but the author refused to give the rights, believing that a movie would ruin the story she had written and it wouldn't do the character justice. Back then, Disney was still known for animation only and hadn't ventured off to feature-length live-action movies just yet. So over the decades, they constantly tried to convince her, which eventually worked in 1961, and only because of her massive decline in book sales. Better late than never, I suppose.
Precisely.
However, Travers did demand rights to approve the script, but didn't get a say in the final draft. The story actually changing the era from the original 1930s to 1910. No idea what difference that would make, but alright.
It's no concern of mine.
But despite having the rights to the screenplay, P.L. Travers was unhappy with the film anyway. She hated the harshness of the Mary Poppins character, despite loving the casting of Julie Andrews. She hated the music, hated the animation, and refused any further adaptations of the books to ever happen again. Don't worry, guys, we'll just wait until the old bitch dies.
Inspirational.
Julie Andrews ended up getting the part after her performance on Broadway in Camelot.
It's only a model.
And her husband, Tony Walton, was even brought in to design costumes as well. She also auditioned for My Fair Lady and got turned down in favour of Audrey Hepburn. But Disney wanted her so badly, he even offered to put filming on hold completely for an entire year if she got the part to wait for her. Other considerations were Mary Martin, Betty Davis, and Angela Lansbury. But when Andrews was approached to play this demonic nanny person, she was actually 3 months pregnant and was unsure she could participate. But Disney was very cooperative and actually waited through her entire pregnancy to film afterwards. In fact, director Robert Wise visited the set, and it was this film that got Julie Andrews the part for The Sound of Music. The author wanted many actors to play Bert, including Richard Burton, Alec Guinness, Rex Harrison, Ron Moody, Laurence Olivier, Peter O'Toole and Peter Sellers. And others considered were Danny Kaye, Fred Astaire, Jim Dale and Cary Grant. Dick Van Dyke was cast after his own show and really wanted to play George Banks' elderly boss as well as Bert. Disney thought that he would be far too young, but insisted on a screen test and ended up getting the role. And I'm not gonna lie, he was so convincing as an old man, I had no idea that this was Dick Van Dyke for years!
We better keep an eye on this one.
In fact, he wanted this part so badly, he offered to do it entirely for free. And despite calling this the greatest film he's ever starred in, he always felt like he was completely miscast, stating that Jim Dale or Ron Moody would have been far better choices. But despite the praise for Dyke and the movie, including his performance, his fake London accent was the subject of so much criticism over the years, and Empire even voted it as the second worst of all time. Maybe Forrest Whitaker's was number one.
Why, it just sting me, Mr. Scorpion.
Dick Van Dyke actually claimed that he had an accent coach called J. Pat O'Malley to help him pull it off. But he was actually Irish, and Dyke claimed that he didn't do the accent any better than he did. Yeah, let's hire an Irish guy to teach an American guy how to do an English accent. Great idea, guys. In fact, the accent was so bad when he starred in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang just a few years later, which is also set in England, and he even has English children and family in the movie, he still speaks his natural American accent with absolutely no acknowledgement whatsoever. Good call.
Well, that is extraordinary.
Filming spanned between May and September of 1963, with editing and animation taking up a further 11 months. To add further annoyance to the author's problems, the movie made loads of changes to its source materials. Some started off small, like Mary controlling the wind instead of the wind controlling her, or Mr. Banks interviewing the nanny instead of his wife. But bigger changes came when the novel had 4 children, 2 were I guess killed off for the movie. The book was more eerie and mysterious, Mary was much more cold and intimidating in the original story, but the author didn't like Mary Poppins being harsh. And they were even going to have Mary and Bert be romantically involved in the feature film, which the author completely forebode, though some subtle indications were still left in. Many songs were also altered or completely scrapped, but regardless, Mary Poppins was finally released on August the 27th, 1964 in Los Angeles, California, and amazingly, the author P.L. Travis was not even invited to the premiere. Ouch.
Cheeky.
She showed up anyway and walked straight up to Walt Disney, loudly demanding that the long animated sequence needed to be cut, but he refused and walked away. She allegedly left in tears, ashamed at what they had done to her creation. She was even outraged by the ending when Mrs. Banks gives up her life as a feminist to be a stay-at-home wife instead. Though she admitted that the movie was well made, she claimed that it was so different to her work she just couldn't find enjoyment or happiness from it. Travis was so outraged by the way her story had been adapted and how she had been treated, she refused to allow any more to be made, even after Walt Disney begged to make sequels due to the movie's success. She was even approached in the 90s about a stage version, and she only accepted as long as only English-born writers were involved, and nobody from the film production had anything to do with it. Sadly, as soon as she passed away in 1996, Disney immediately started helping with the stage adaptation, working with the producer Cameron McIntosh for the project. Bit douchey.
It's the most disgraceful sight I've ever seen.
This was actually the most expensive Disney film ever made at the time, costing somewhere between $4.4 and $6 million. In its initial run, Mary Poppins grossed somewhere between 31 and 33 million, and to this day holds the record for the most Academy Award nominations for a Disney film with a whopping 13. Unfortunately, only walking away with Best Actress for Julie Andrews, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Visual Effects, and Best Original Song for
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree.
The movie also picked up a Golden Globe for Julie Andrews' performance, 2 Grammys, Channel 4 picked it as the 3rd greatest family film in history, and it was the only movie of Walt Disney during his life to be nominated for Best Picture. And then of course we got a sequel years later. You know, Mary Poppins is a bit weird, bit strange, but it's a whole lot of fun.
Common knowledge.
Julie Andrews was absolutely perfect for this role, she really was. The character makes a point that she never gets angry, and to be fair, she doesn't. She's stern and puts the kids in their place, but you can tell that she truly loves them. The film ends with her realising that she's reunited the family, she's helped them get close again, and now she has to say goodbye, but they've already forgotten about her. It's heart-wrenching drama, and her performance is amazing. Sometimes she can come across as a bit arrogant.
Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way.
No, you're not Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Do you really think so?
The parents are horrible people. George lambasts them for having any kind of imagination or fun. His wife literally has never met Bert before, but she can't be bothered to look after her kids, so she asks him, a complete stranger, to do it instead. I wonder why your kids keep running away.
What will Mr. Banks say? He's going to be cross enough as it is to come home and find the children missing.
Who would be this calm about their children disappearing? She's more concerned about the nanny leaving.
George, they're missing.
Splendid.
Hey, it's the McCanns. But Bert gives George this speech about kids growing up, and it's kind of like the story of Scrooge, with him turning his life around, and I can't fault it for its message. The thing is, as a kid you hate George for how nasty he is, but now as an adult I actually relate. I mean, everyone in the house is jolly singing songs, and he's really irritated by how happy everyone is. Right there with you, George. Makes me sick. Despite his awful accent, I do really like the casting of Van Dyke. Ron Moody would have been fine too, but Dyke gives such a childlike, goofy aspect to the character. But when it comes to serious scenes, his dramatic performance nails it perfectly. The sets and direction are beautifully organised, and honestly, I think the most impressive part is the choreography. The sheer amount of rehearsals and talent that went behind it is insane. Although, I've always wondered what the people in the houses were thinking hearing this sound coming from their roof. Yeah, so then I told them that... Obviously the main focus is the music, and unlike a lot of other musicals, this film tells the story within the songs rather than pausing the story to sing a track in between. There's all the famous and catchy numbers we all know and love, but I think we forget there's a lot of ones that we just forget because of how bland and boring they are.
Cast off the shackles of yesterday.
I mean, is that anyone's favourite song here?
My slippers, sherry and pipe are due at 6:02.
Nope, don't remember that one.
Then there's that kind what can't make up their mind.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. The kids are also quite likeable. They get into mischief, but it's harmless kid stuff you'd expect. But I must say, this film is actually unintentionally terrifying. I mean, look at the opening shot of Mary sitting on a cloud. It's scary as hell. Is she a demon? Seriously, the wind blows away all the other nannies, and this looks scarier than anything in The Exorcist. She even brings the kids' toys to life, which lock Michael in his closet. The maid clearly sees them defy the laws of physics, and instead of, someone help, she finds it charming. Wouldn't you be more like Mr. Banks? Satan is looking after your kids. Her reflection even comes to life. She can even enter paintings to cartoon land. She can talk to dogs and her umbrella. And by the way, none of this is ever explained. We never find out how she does any of these things. For all we know, she's a fucking X-Man. X-woman. She was at Hogwarts.
I never explain anything.
Now, at first I thought maybe this is just the kids' imaginations, you know, like in Pan's Labyrinth. I thought this because the kids don't even act freaked out when they enter the painting and are suddenly in an animated world. I thought obviously Bert is telling them a story and they're imagining it and we're just getting a visual representation. This is backed up later as the kids bring up the story to Mary and she completely dismisses it and denies it ever happening. The problem with this theory is very simple. They use magic powers earlier in the movie. Right here in front of the worst green screens known to man. Are the kids imagining this too? No, it can't be their imagination because later when none of the Banks family are around, the bank owner starts floating, so it can't be their imagination. I'm putting way too much thought into this, aren't I?
Yes, sir.
The aforementioned green screens haven't aged very well, but how about here, where Michael's hand mysteriously vanishes and you can clearly see he isn't touching the bottom of the table, ruining the split screen effect. I've also never understood why the Academy Award winning song Chim Chimney is first sang when Bert is by his paintings in the park. It makes no sense. When he's actually a chimney sweep, it makes sense, but it's just weird that it's played throughout the film randomly.
And quick as you can say, Bob's your uncle, the most unusual things begin to happen.
But not me having a convincing accent. Pip pip cheerio. I actually like that Mary and Bert don't get together, but how do they even know each other? It's never explained or clarified.
I never explain anything.
The animated sequence also goes on for way too long. I know it was the style in the 60s to have long, dragged out dance numbers, and for the most part they're great. But this just drags on for forever with just random things that don't connect to anything happening. And during it is when the famous supercalifragilisticexpialidocious song plays, but it's introduced so lazily. She gets interviewed after winning a not really horse race and doesn't know what to say, so she says the word, which by the way the original meaning for the word is actually Irish or Scottish prostitutes. No, really. Although others suggest that the composers, the Sherman brothers, heard the word at summer camp and used it as a term that adults wouldn't understand. Nah, Irish or Scottish prostitutes.
You know, you can say it backwards, which is docious ali expiistic fragicali rupus.
Why would super backwards be rupus? Wouldn't it be repus? The kids aren't the best actors, but they're in no means bad, except here when Michael clearly looks at the camera. But the thing is, the issue with the animated sequence is the same issue with the rest of the film. The plot comes to a halt just for these random and weird issues to arise. They visit this guy who's the voice of the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, and they need to get him down from the ceiling because apparently laughing makes you float. Now I'm fine if a film has very little plot but is still entertaining, but these subplots and events are just really weird and random. Were these the best I could think of? I get that they're adapting from the books, but it's just obviously a collection of the books all merged into one. Don't get me wrong, they're sweet and are a lot of fun, but I can't help but think they could have done better. It's a film that is over 2 hours long and there's not a whole lot of story or plot, just padded with random and weird things going on.
There's no way to get down.
Oh, no, there is a way. But frankly, I don't like to mention it, because you have to think it's something sad.
Linkara's movie career. Linkara's movie career.
Michael, look! It's her!
Hey, something for Home Alone to rip off! So George takes his kids to the bank to invest some money and open an account because I guess in 1910 you could have an account that young. But this is just creepy. The weird old guys approach the kids and just look at the looks on their faces, all for a tiny bit of money. Oh, and by the way, the kids also had no idea that this was Dick Van Dyke, so they were genuinely worried that he was going to fall over and hurt himself. After the kids run away, George is called into the darkest and creepiest room imaginable to be fired.
What are you talking about, men? There's no such word.
Oh, yes, it is a word. A perfectly good word. Actually, do you know what there's no such thing as? It turns out, with due respect, when all is said and done, that there's no such thing as you.
Never say that again. And after he loses it, laughing hysterically and leaving, the old guy cracks up and floats, but how come George wasn't floating? I mean, he laughed.
No telling what he might do in a fit of despondency.
Wouldn't hurt to have them drag the river. There's a nice spot there by Southwark Bridge, popular with jumpers.
Jesus, a Disney film about suicide. Well done. It also bothers me that when George becomes overjoyed, he keeps singing the famous song incorrectly.
Just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine
George.
go down.
It played earlier in the film. How did this go unnoticed?
Spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
And he says it wrong over and over again. How did this slip through the cracks?
Father died laughing.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir.
Oh, no nonsense. Nothing to be sorry about. Never seen him happier in his life.
Yay! He's dead and nobody cares! Let's celebrate!
Goodbye, Mary Poppins. Don't stay away too long.
Yeah, make a sequel in 53 years' time. Honestly, these are just harmless nitpicks. They don't dent the film's credibility one bit. The songs are catchy and memorable, still being honoured decades later. The characters are likeable, other than the parents. The story is charming, the cinematography is legendary, and it's a damn good family film.